This should be where you're at. Yesterday in class, or today, actually, earlier in class, um, you were working on adding and subtracting rational expressions. Remember that rational is just another word for fraction. And then the second part of this standard is working on multiplying, and I'm also going to include dividing. Okay, so multiplying and dividing rational expressions. Your first step to multiplying and dividing rational expressions is to factor all numerators and denominators. Whereas when we're adding and subtracting, back up here, we just factored the denominators because we had to get common denominators, and factoring them made it easier to figure out what the common denominator was. With multiplying and dividing rational expressions, we need to factor everything, and you'll see why. Second part, you cancel out like factors. I'm also going to include in this step here, maybe in parentheses, if you are dividing, make sure to first flip and multiply. Because keep in mind, whenever you're dividing fractions, like whenever we have a fraction over a fraction, I always tell you to take the bottom fraction, flip it, and multiply it. The reason that works is like if I have 8 over 1 divided by 1 over 2, what that's saying is how many 1/2 fit into 8, which there are 16 1/2 that fit into 8, which you would get the number 16 by taking that bottom fraction, flipping, and multiplying. So the flip and multiply is just the mathematical method or trick to figuring out what that number is, but the concept is how many of the fraction on the bottom fit into the fraction on the top. And we just flip and multiply to figure out what that is. Alright, go ahead and pull up the page. We're going to do 3 examples here. Let's start with, I lost my page. Start with this one. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and factor all my numerators and denominators. When I look at the numerator here, I see that I can at least pull out an x. So if you can't factor it like you would normal quadratic because you don't have 3 terms, at least see if you can pull out a greatest common factor, which we can pull out an x. And then on the bottom, the 2 numbers that multiply to get 1 and add to get 2 are 1 and 1. Over here, the 2 numbers that multiply to get 3 and add to get 4 are 3 and 1. And then on the bottom here, I can pull out the greatest common factor of 1x. And then you look and see what is common. You can only ever cancel out factors or single terms that are exactly the same. So in this case, an x and an I can cross reduce and cancel those out. I have an x plus 1 and an x plus 1. Those are going to cancel. I have an x plus 3 and an x plus 3, the top and bottom. Those are going to cancel. And I'm left with the expression x minus 2 over x plus 1. Now, a very common mistake is that students get to this scenario and they try to cross out the x's. That is not correct, because keep in mind that these are glued together. They are one unit. So you can only cancel out this x minus 2 if there's an x minus 2 on the bottom. You can't separate them out because they're being added and subtracted. Okay, let's do another example. Let's do this one. Okay, for this example, I see that my operation here is division. Whenever you're dividing two fractions, we're going to take the bottom fraction, which would be this one, and we're going to flip it and multiply. So when I rewrite the step down here, I'm going to factor and kind of do the flip and multiplying all at the same time. So let's factor this first. I can pull out a 7x. On the bottom here, the two numbers that multiply to get negative 35 and add to get negative 2 are negative 7 and positive 5. Okay, and then I'm going to take this, I'm going to flip it and multiply and factor at the same time. So if I look at this x minus 7, that can't be factored anymore, but I'm going to flip it and put parentheses around it to show that, hey, I looked at it, I can pull out a 1, so essentially I can group those together. They're glued together. I can only cancel them out if there's another x minus 7. Then on the bottom will be x squared. Once you factor the numerators and denominators, you just look through and see if there's any like factors. I have an x, a single x up here, and two x's here with this x squared. I can cancel out one single x on the top and the bottom. This x minus 7 would cancel out with this x minus 7. And it looks like I would be left with 7 times x minus 3 all over x plus 5. Oh, and that x. And that would be your simplified. I mean, you could distribute through in both cases if you wanted to, but I would accept that as a perfectly fine answer. Okay. And for the 4-type problems, is where you have to add, subtract, and multiply in a multi-step problem. We are not going to cover that quite yet. I think I'll wait on the 4-type problems until we've practiced the 3 types for a couple, well, at least for one more day, because we're having a test at the end of the day on Thursday. So go ahead, well, let me check the time here. Yes, I have time. Okay. So we're going to start with standard F2 here. Okay, we're going to, you know what I'm going to do here actually? I'm going to stop this video. I'm going to make another video. Make sure you watch both. So you've watched the standard for F3. I'm going to do another video for F2. Or actually, you know what? No, I'm going to cut this video short. We're going to talk about this tomorrow because I think it'll be better if I do this in person. Sorry, I should have thought about this before I went over how to do it. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this will be the last, you're done at this point. We're just going to practice, so you know tomorrow. This is actually pretty quick once I introduce it. These problems go very quickly once you know the pattern. So the pattern will be better to talk about in person because then I can actually see if you're getting it or not by your faces. And we'll practice these types of problems tomorrow. And then Wednesday, well, Tuesday into Wednesday, we'll start talking about the 4-type problems in both scenarios, do some formatives, and then you'll be ready for your test on Thursday over those 2 standards. Okay? So that's it. This is Crisscross signing off.